Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Smithsonian Teacher Preview session. This is for teaching the 57th U.S. Presidential Inauguration. We have the preview session today, and then we have the Q&A with Smithsonian experts on January 10th, so we do hope that you'll join us live for that as well. And also on the website we have some pages where you can introduce yourself, so we do hope that you both start conversations there and continue conversations from our live sessions. Now, during the session today, you can enter any comments or questions you have into the Q&A chat box on the left side of the screen. We'll do our best to address as many of those as we can, but if you don't get an immediate response, don't worry, we are keeping track of them, and we'll try to take a look at all of the questions if we can. Now, if you have technical questions, you can type those in there, and I'll respond to you privately to get those sorted out as quickly as possible. And before we go on, I'd love for those of you that haven't had an opportunity to introduce yourselves to type a little bit in the chat box. Feel free to give us a hello and let us know where you're joining us from. And I'm also going to drop a couple of interactive polls onto the screen. And we'd love to know, first off, what grades do you teach? And you can click the gray bubble that best corresponds to your answer. And if it's not applicable for you, then feel free to type in the chat box and let us know what brings you to the online session today. Also dropping a second poll on the screen, what subjects do you teach? Great, and I see a few answers coming in here. Looks like a fair amount of social studies and some others as well, which hopefully we'll be seeing some more information on that in the chat box. I'm just going to drop one more question here on the screen. Have you ever been to a Smithsonian museum? And you can click yes, no, or not sure if you don't know if it was definitely a part of the Smithsonian or a separate institution. Great, and it looks like the majority of our participants have been. And great to see people signing in from all over. We have DC represented, New York City, Northern Virginia, the Dominican Republic. Thank you for joining us. Great, so moving right along, I am Adam Lafacci. I will be moderating the session today, and if you do need my assistance at any point, feel free to let me know in the chat box. We're going to throw one more poll question up on the screen for you. We'd like to collect information on how many of you are gathered out there joining us today. So feel free to click on the gray bubble that lets us know how many people are sitting with you now. I'm just going to pull that up into the left side of the screen. And I am proud to be joining this webinar series. I'm working with Learning Times as one of the producers on the event. And I think you're all going to enjoy hearing from our speakers today. We're going to briefly touch on who we have joining us. But I would also like to point out that if you have any technical questions that you're not able to ask us in the chat box, then feel free to email us at smithsonian@learningtimes.com. And we'll have our team working with you to get you back in the online room as quickly as possible. And also, the conversation continues in the Twitterverse, so feel free to tweet away at #Inaug2013. And we're joined today by Carrie Kotcho, Elizabeth Eder, and Ashley Naranjo. And Carrie's bringing us Mission POTUS from the National Museum of American History. Then we'll hear from Elizabeth Eder from the Smithsonian American Art Museum on the honor of your company is requested, Lincoln's second inaugural ball at the Patent Office. And we'll wrap up hearing from Ashley Naranjo from the Smithsonian Center for Education and Museum Studies on Bringing the Smithsonian to You, Exploration and Discovery through Smithsonian Quests. So once again, we encourage you to jump onto the discussion forums on the website after the session today. And thank you for joining us today. So without further ado, we're going to move into our first piece, which is actually a video that we would like to share with you. This video is a little background on educational programs with the Smithsonian. And feel free to enter any comments or questions you have as it's playing in the chat box. Great, and with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to our first speaker today. We'll be hearing from Carrie Kotcho.
Hello, greetings from the staff at the Smithsonian. I want to welcome you all to our presentations today. Really excited to get a chance to talk to you all directly. Thanks for joining us after your long school day. We're advancing the slide.
Great, and as we kick this off too, we're just sharing a quick poll with you. We're wondering, as a subject, my students think American history is, and you'll notice a few options there up on the screen.
Come on, best subject ever. Just kidding.
All right, that's good to know. It looks like a fairly even split between the best subject ever and mostly reading about dead people.
Excellent, excellent. Both of those are true. So hi, that's me there where the little arrow is, Carrie Kotcho. I'm the Chief of Education Outreach here at the National Museum of American History, and just glad to be here with you today. I really love my job because I get a chance to make that quote that you saw on that last screen from our first Secretary of the Smithsonian. I get to make it come to life by getting to work with some of the world's most brilliant folks, historians, artists, technologists, And what I do is work to create free standards-based learning resources for you guys, for you and your teachers, for kids from grades K all the way up through college age. And we basically focus on creating the kinds of activities that let your students do the historical detective work that we do here at the museum. We really want students to be able to do history. So let me show you something cool I'm working on right now. As many of you know, we have President Abraham Lincoln's gold pocket watch here at the museum, and you may have seen something on the news about that recently. So through primary source documents, we know that it was purchased in the 1850s from an Illinois jeweler. It was very, very accurate for the time, and it's an 18-karat gold case. Pretty beautiful piece of art as well as a timepiece. But we can learn a lot of other things from examining the watch. For example, Lincoln has the reputation of not being a real fashion plate, maybe being a little frumpy, and really not considered to be a vain person. But a fine gold watch like this is a real conspicuous symbol of success as a lawyer. So we do know that he was paying attention to his looks and what impressions he was making on other people around him. But we can still learn more if we look a little deeper, and also if we have a little bit of historical detective luck. In 2008, a gentleman named Doug Stiles received a letter from a relative in England saying they found a letter from Stiles' great-great-grandfather, an Irish immigrant and a watchmaker named Jonathan Dillon. And that letter said that Dillon had inscribed a secret message inside of Lincoln's watch. Stiles did a quick search on the internet and found a New York Times article from 1906 where Dillon told the story to reporters at the age of 84. So Stiles contacted us here at the museum to see if this was true and if it was the same watch, that we had here. And we were getting ready to prepare an exhibition on Lincoln at the time, and we were, working with the watch, so we decided that we would look inside to see what was there. And so, very dramatically, we did open the watch. This is an image from inside the watch. And you might see a number of inscriptions and all kinds of things written inside. I'm going to give you a little highlight. What it actually says in here is, just as the news reached Washington that the Confederate forces had fired on Fort Sumter, April 12, 1861, Jonathan Dillon was repairing Lincoln's watch, and he was just caught up in the excitement of the moment and the concern of the moment. So while he was working on the watch, he inscribed this piece right here that says, April 13th, 1861, Fort Sumter was attacked by rebels, and on the above date, J. Dillon, April 13, 1861, Washington. Thank God we have a government, Jonathan Dillon. Pretty cool history mystery. And so what we didn't know or expect when we opened up the watch was that there would be other messages inside. And so we see that in 1864, you can see, if you look very closely, another watchmaker named L.E. Gross signed his name. Also, at some point, someone, whether it was L.E. Gross or someone else, put Jeff Davis inside the watch. So right now, what I'm working on is doing a concept for an interactive learning experience for middle and high school students that will help them explore this watch in the same way that our curators were able to discover the secret messages, figure out what they mean, and maybe we'll even be able to put together a social media outreach part of that will allow students to help us learn more and maybe find out who L.E. Gross was. So as you can see, just from that example, that's the kind of experience we really want to develop and work with you guys out there. It's the kind of experience we want to share. It's something special that the museum can offer, that you really can't get in any other way. And as we all prepare for teaching about, the upcoming presidential inauguration, this is a special moment in time, I just thought I'd share with you just a mix of museum artifacts, documents, interactives, lesson plans, and things that focus on presidents' election citizenship and inaugurations for all ages from early elementary all the way up through high school. You can kind of think of this as your presidential ingredients list as you're getting ready to put your lessons together. All the materials you're going to see today are available for free via our website. The next few minutes from now, we're just going to go over a few things. We're going to look at exploring the online resources we have, primarily relating to U.S. presidents, voting, citizenship, and the presidency. But all of them encourage students to do history and cover topics, really everything from George Washington all the way up through September 11th. And so the materials this presentation will also give you some sense of depth and breadth of the resources that we have available for all different ages from early elementary up. And then we want to talk a little bit about how you can use the resources we have here, both online and through workshops that we have, how you can use them for your own personal, professional development. So I am going to share my screen.
Great. And
over to the internet.
Very quickly before we jump into that, we're curious to hear from our participants on what are some of your biggest issues you're facing this year. And we've just dropped a poll on the screen. We'd love to get your feedback on that. Then as those answers come in, we'll jump over and we'll move through a few different resources to share with you. And it's looking like differentiation is the clear front runner, followed by integrating Common Core into instruction.
Yeah, Common Core is very quickly becoming a very important topic for all of us. And we're glad to see social studies skills in there integrated into the language arts.
Great.
Great. So, Adam, are we looking at the internet or are we looking at...
Well, feel free to pull up that website and we'll bring that right up on the screen for everyone.
All right, there it is.
Excellent, and we are seeing it.
Okay, great. Well, you should be seeing Preparing for the Oath, U.S. History and Civics for Citizenship. This is an online resource available to you. It's designed for 5th through 8th graders, as far as K through 12 is concerned. But originally, it's a collaboration between the United States Customs and Immigration Services. We developed it so that we could help folks that are studying to become citizens to pass the civics portion of the citizenship test. And so there's many different ways you can use this. It's written at a level so that it would be ideal for a 5th grader. It's designed for English language learners. There are learn, practice, and test modes. The themes that you'll see in here deal with United States government, citizenship skills, immigration, basically any of the basic civics information that's on that test. So here's just a quick section that you might see. It shows a little movie about each of the topics. If there's some sort of interactive, we sometimes put those in this try mode. Otherwise, you get to answer the question from the citizenship test there. You can also go and take a sample test. To pass the civics portion, you will get 10 randomly chosen questions from a list of 100. And then in order to pass the civics test, to become a citizen, you must get 6 of those questions correct. So you can go through and simulate doing the test here with your students. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. There are wraparound materials that help adapt this program for use in 5th through 8th grade, and those are available online. And I will show you how to get those in a little bit. So another resource I want to show you is called The Object of History. It's a project we did with George Mason University, the Center for History and New Media, and they do some fantastic work. We were very happy to work with them. This is a project that focuses on themes of like the of the foundations of the nation, civil rights, women's history, immigration, and citizenship as different separate topics. And when you go to each section, the students in 8th through 12th grade can focus on a short video that will give them a basic background. It will then provide them with, excuse me, got the wrong screen here. It will provide them with the actual object. There we go. Oops. There we go. Provide them with an object that they can manipulate, and then they are able to build their own online exhibition using the materials from the website. And for some reason, it's not wanting to load. So I am going to move on to the next one. I will give you the link to this, and you can explore it on your own. But it's quite a extraordinary website. You can even use this as a tech project in your project-based learning curriculum by downloading the tool that builds this whole website, and you could build your own version of this entire website as a project in your class. Adam, we seem to be offline on the internet, so I'm going to see if we can either reload this page or go back to the slides.
Sure, and if you'd like to move through the samples of each site that we have in the PowerPoint deck, feel free to navigate over to there until that connects for you again.
Yep. All right. Sometimes the internet does not cooperate. So let me move forward. We talked about object of history. Another website that I wanted to talk to you briefly about is the American Presidency, A Glorious Burden. And this is a website with many, many resources. As you can see kind of from the design, it's a little bit older than some of the other ones we've seen, and it is in our queue for redesign. But don't let that fool you. There are just a ton of resources here for you. Everything from lesson plans to short media pieces. At the top of your screen where you see the presidents across the top, that's an interactive timeline that you can use to navigate through the different eras, the different presidents, and associate objects from our collections with that. There's a section on inauguration. There's a section on voting, campaigning, and it all is integrated with the objects from the collection. And all the materials are standards-based. I'm going to click to the next one. Now, at this point, you're probably saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to find all this stuff again? I don't want to write down all these URLs. We have a site called History Explorer. I'm going to try to navigate back over there and see if I can pull that up and see if the web is back up. Are you seeing my screen, Adam?
Great, I'm seeing it now, and it looks like it navigated over to that page for you.
Super. Just a little bit slow today. So this is Smithsonian's History Explorer. It is our museum's method for you to find all the materials that we talked about today by typing in keywords. Just want to walk quickly across the top of the screen here just to show you the kinds of features that we have, but you can find lesson plans here. You can find interactives in media. I'm going to click on Museum Artifacts just to show you our curated list of artifacts that you can see. And these are artifacts that have been requested by teachers in K through 12 or ones that we know are very tightly connected to the curriculum. So here you can see Migrant Mother by Dorothea Lange, the photograph, flintlock muskets. Don't want to scroll too quickly down. This is the gold nugget that started the gold rush, the Sutter's Mill gold nugget. So at any time you're looking for materials, you would just visit historyexplorer.si.edu. Another thing that we have that is particularly helpful now with the inauguration here is we have a themes page. So popular themes or anniversary dates, things that are coming up, we'll create a theme for them in History Explorer. So you'll be able to just go here to themes, inauguration, explore theme, and see a collection of a variety of materials for all different age levels that touch upon that theme. So I'm going to move us on. So now that you know how to find all of the materials that are there, I just wanted to touch really quickly on a couple of three other items One is just that we also, in addition to objects in the collection, we also have quite a few documents. And one of the resources we have online for you is our documents gallery. I just pulled up this particular one. This online exploration of a document deals with the Emancipation Proclamation and includes copies, zoomable copies of a variety of documents, including Abraham Lincoln's handwritten letters that he wrote to either persuade people to his cause or to defend his cause in some way. So you and your students could work together with these on these documents. We also provide transcript of all these documents as well. For folks that are teaching elementary, I saw we seem pretty evenly divided between elementary and high school. We do, as you saw from some of the other resources we put up there, we do cover 4th and 5th grade pretty well in elementary, but for students that are 4th grade and under, there's a particular site we have called Our Story, which works with language arts integration to take curricular topics and use a work of historical fiction or a biography and marry that with a whole bunch of activities that help you differentiate for different learning styles, different kinds of students, different kinds of learners. So there's always a technology-based activity. There's always a learning from a hands-on, a play and create type of activity. And we have field trips, but they're not necessarily field trips that come here, but field trips that you can do in your local community that relate to the reading of this book. And we also provide other scale-up, scale-down books. So if this particular book isn't right for your class or all the learners in your class, you can scale up or down. Last but not least, I just wanted to kind of go broader and just say that in addition to anything that you would find at the National Museum of American History, the Smithsonian has millions and millions of objects in the collections. And one great way to look at the broader set of collections, not just mine, but ones here at American History, but ones at National Portrait Gallery or American Art, you can go to collections.si.edu and you can look through. I just did a search here on Abraham Lincoln photographs. And I want to scroll down. I'm sorry if this is a little fast. I'm going to move myself down here. And I wanted to pop on this one. And then we can, after we look at this, we can go back to the slide deck. But I wanted to really look at this and show you that you can pull any object that we have online in the collection, and you can zoom in, look closely. Because I really want you to look closely at the chain here, and then I want to swap back over to the slide deck to show you the slide towards the end, which I'll quickly move to. There you go. That shows the watch. So if you look at that photograph and you look at this watch, you can see over there on the right-hand side, the connector there, the little latch that attaches the watch is pretty much identical to the one in the photograph. So you could do an exploration with your students, looking at the photograph, looking at a real object, looking at Lincoln's letters, and putting together a very interesting project using all the ingredients that we talked about today. So just wanted to quickly go over object-based learning. Here's some of the benefits. Sparks interest, can help students make personal connections. It's really great for engagement, great for looking at multiple perspectives. It's multi-sensory. It can definitely work in a variety of ways, from your own professional development to assessment to introducing a concept. And for sure, our materials will always hit upon critical thinking skills. And we're trying to make sure that everything also matches up to the Common Core. Here's how to stay in contact with us. We are on Twitter at Explore History. And if you'd like to talk with us online, we have a community. If you've ever worked with Thinkfinity, we're at the Thinkfinity community, and there's our address, and these slides will be posted. You can join us on our email newsletter. And thank you very much. This is our direct email. If you want to email us, it's a great way to get in touch as well. I want to thank you very much. And if you have any additional questions, I'm glad to hear them now. I've been watching carefully. I didn't see too many in the in the chat.
Great, thank you, Carrie. And we'll keep an eye on the chat, so if you do have any questions that come to mind as we're continuing along, please feel free to type them in. But for now, I'm going to turn the floor over to Elizabeth Eder.
Great. Thanks a lot, Adam and Carrie, for that great presentation about using objects to teach, especially history and, of course, language arts and other subjects. Today, we're going to talk about Lincoln's second inaugural ball at the Patent Office. And Adam put up this poll, do you recognize the building? And a bunch of you say yes. And if you want to just type in the discussions, what building is it? That'd be great. If anybody just wants to let us know where you think this building is, because I think that it's such a fascinating. Okay, Raphael says, yeah, it's the official patent office. The building has 4 porticos that were modeled after the Parthenon in Athens. Some people who haven't been to Washington, D.C. think it's the National Archives, the Supreme Court, but it's actually the building that we're going to be focusing on today for our presentation. And I'm trying to move the slides forward, Adam, and I'm not sure. Thank you. Okay, maybe I have a little delay there. So in just a few weeks, as you know, the second inauguration of President Barack Obama is going to take place. And as you probably are aware, the 2013 inaugural theme is Faith in America's Future. But how many of you know that that marks the 150th anniversary of the placement of the Statue of Freedom sculpture on top of the U.S. Capitol Dome? And that's what this photograph is showing. In this session, we're going to briefly touch on the history of inaugural ceremonies with a particular emphasis on the second inauguration of President Abraham Lincoln, which took place in 1865. And again, I'm having trouble. Thank you. And I'm going to click again. And for some reason, there we go. It's really not. I guess, like Carrie was finding, the slides aren't advancing very quickly.
Oh, and Liz, just make sure you're clicking on the arrow in the lower left corner, and it should jump to the next one, but if you need to, just say next slide, and I'll take over for you.
So I'm Elizabeth Eder, and I work as Assistant Chair of the National Education Partnerships at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. As you know, we're one of the 19 museums and research centers that make up the Smithsonian. The information that I'm going to be presenting today is part of a larger lesson plan that was developed for the National Park Service for their Teaching with Historic Places website. And this lesson will be available online this coming spring. On July 4th, 1836, President Andrew Jackson signed a new patent law and construction began on a new building for the accompanying office. And the Patent Office building, which is now part of the Smithsonian Institution, and the physical setting of 2 museums, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, where I work, and the National Portrait Gallery, this building was erected wing by wing over a 32-year period, beginning in 1836 and ending in 1868. And for those of you that have been to Washington, D.C., you know that this takes over 2 city blocks. It's the 4th major federal building to be built in D.C. and was intended to serve as, and I quote, a temple to the industrial arts. It has offices on the first 2 floors, but there were enormous galleries on the top floor that were designed for the display of patent models. And many of you probably are aware of the fact that inventors, U.S. inventors, were required to submit with their patent applications patent models. And this building had space also on that top floor for exhibits of public interest beyond patent models. However, the building also served many other purposes over time and was the location of several significant events throughout its history. And what we're going to do now is look at and listen to one of the events that took place in the building. For example, during the Civil War, the Patent Office served as a hospital for wounded Union soldiers, as a temporary barracks, and as a morgue. We're going to listen to Charles Robertson, Deputy Director Emeritus of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, as he describes this building's use as a Civil War hospital.
The date is April 1861. Fort Sumter has fallen. War has been declared. President Lincoln has called for 75,000 volunteers for the Union Army. Colonel Ambrose Burnside has responded by raising the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, which was shipped by train to Washington. But there was nowhere to house the soldiers, so they were quartered in this building. Take a look at the illustration in a newspaper from that time showing the soldiers in their bunks beside the cases of patent models in this gallery. The regiment only stayed 2 months before it was sent to fight in the First Battle of Bull Run. Unfortunately, it left behind 400 broken panes in the cases and many missing patent models. The regiment's enlisted was only for 3 months because everyone thought the war would be over by then. So the regiment was then disbanded.
What's interesting to me also is that poet Walt Whitman used to visit and attend to the wounded in the Patent Office, and he praised the building as the noblest of Washington buildings. This is the exact same photo that Carrie just showed you a minute ago with that fantastic pocket watch. And today we're going to focus on perhaps one of the most dramatic historic events to take place in the building. And that event was the second inaugural ball for President Abraham Lincoln. So my question to all of you is, what events are usually part of an inauguration of a U.S. president? If you want to just type in the discussion box, what are some of the events that you recall?
Great, and we just entered that question into the chat box in the lower left-hand corner, and I see an early answer from Patricia, swearing in.
Great, okay, swearing in, a parade, super. Any other things come to mind? I just gave you one clue, and if you went on Ticketmaster last night to try to buy tickets to this particular event, you know that there was a little snafu, and all the tickets to the event, thank you, Martin, all the tickets to the inaugural ball were sold out before they were even supposed to go online. So that's just a headline that just came across our local newspaper, the Washington Post, just a few minutes ago. So lots of things take part in an inauguration, and no two are the same. But on Saturday, March 4th, 1865, festivities began for Lincoln's second inaugural. And as you see in the photograph on the screen now, the day began very wet and windy. And after several days of rain, there was a lot of mud in the streets of Washington, D.C., but people came from all over the country to the Capitol, and apparently all accommodations were full and overflowing. As Martin mentioned, there was a parade, and in fact, Lincoln's inaugural parade made history as African Americans marched in the parade for the first time. However, Lincoln didn't join the procession for his second inauguration because he had already been to the Capitol that morning to sign last-minute bills into law and to attend the swearing-in of his vice president, Andrew Johnson. So the parade proceeded without him. A crowd of 30,000 to 40,000 people gathered at the east front of the Capitol to watch as Lincoln became the 16th president of the United States. People around the nation also followed the inauguration at home, much like we might do today with social media. But in that day, the social media of the day were the illustrated weekly newspapers such as the one you see on the left. At noon, the presidential party stepped onto a specially erected platform on the east portico of the Capitol, as you see in the photograph on the right. And there was loud applause playing. That's the arrow showing you where Lincoln is standing. And bands began to play. Actually, how many of you saw the movie Lincoln? If you can use the raise your hands or just type into the discussion box on the left. Anybody see that movie? If you did, these images may be familiar to you. For one of the final scenes of the movie was a flashback, and it was modeled after this particular photograph. Oh, many of you have seen it. That's great. 50-50. Well, Lincoln's second inaugural address at 703 words was one of the shortest and perhaps best remembered inaugural speeches in U.S. history. In the scene that was depicted in the movie, Lincoln's soaring eloquence concluded with these words, and I read, "With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we are in to bind up the nation's wounds." Following the inaugural address, the 35-word oath of office is actually the only constitutional requirement when swearing in a new president. And it reads here from Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, "I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." The illustrated weekly cover here shows President Lincoln placing his hand on a Bible as Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase administered the oath of office. When President Barack Obama took the oath of office in 2009, his hand was placed on the Lincoln Bible, not the one shown in this illustration, but the one that Lincoln used in 1861 in his first inauguration. So yes, it's the so-called Lincoln Bible that was used, not in this picture in 1865, but in 1861. On the evening of March 4th, after the inauguration, ceremonies took place. The public reception was held in the East Room of what was called, in that day, the President's House. Today it's known as the White House. And again, this scene was also shown in the movie. 2 evenings later, on March 6, 1865, the inaugural ball was held on the third floor of the Patent Office building. And invitations such as the one you see on the left were issued to officials and dignitaries. And tickets, such as the one you see on the right, were sold to the public for $10. Let's study this document for a minute or two. Based on what you can see, and I know it can be difficult to see some of the details, what might you infer from the document? What questions do any of you have about the documents? What questions do they raise?
Great, and for those of you that would like a closer look, you can actually click the full screen button in the top right-hand corner of those images, and that will enlarge them on your screen, and just click it again to come back to the chat room.
So Martin's asking a great question, why two ladies? Any other questions come to mind, or any other thoughts about these two documents? Raphael has a question, doesn't mention the cabinet. I'm assuming you're asking if the invitations have the cabinet members on it, but the invitation on the left actually has the members of the inaugural ball committee on it. Let's hear, and hopefully, Martin, your question will be answered when we listen again to what Charles Robertson has to say about the actual celebration.
The date is March 6, 1865. The dancing at the ball took place in the North Gallery through the door on your right. At that time, it was an enormous open hall prior to the installation of patent model cases. Note the illustration of the ball published in a newspaper at the time. The band is located on the raised platform to the left, while the President and First Lady sit on a dais to the right. Lighting is provided by gas jets and pipes suspended from the ceiling. There was an air of euphoria because the Civil War was clearly nearing its end. The buffet table was a disaster, however. The guests had reached 4,000, and when supper was announced at midnight, the hungry crowd surged into the West Gallery and decimated the buffet table. A newspaper reported the next day that as much food was wasted as was consumed. The Lincolns departed at 1:30, but dancing continued until 4 a.m.
Well, now we learned a little bit about the inauguration itself, but not necessarily about the tickets. So let's go back to those for just a second. And the question, had the Civil War ended at this time? No, it actually hadn't, but it was pretty close to being concluded in that there was a feeling that the Union Army was going to succeed and the country would be, I guess we could say, united once again. The question earlier about the invitation on the right admitting a gentleman and two ladies, the best that I can say about that is we know that proceeds from the sales of these inaugural ball tickets benefited the families of soldiers in the field. And a gentleman would always want to be escorting a lady to an event such as this type. Why two ladies? I'm not sure of the answer to that, but I'm sure on Thursday, for the continuation of this, that would be a great question to ask one of the Smithsonian experts, such as Harry Rubenstein, who is a specialist in these kinds of things. How many of you noticed who the invitation on the left belonged to? Did anybody notice who that was? Whose invitation that was? Maybe you can't read it, but the invitation on the left belonged to Clara Barton, and she was an official, officially invited to the ball. So moving on, the tradition of an official inaugural ball didn't actually take place until 1809 after the inauguration of the fourth president, James Madison. But Lincoln's inaugural ball definitely was one of the highlights in terms of the use of the patent office. And this is actually the bill of fare that was served at the event. And if you can look, you can see what perhaps all of the mishaps that Charles Robertson had mentioned earlier were about. And with 4,000 people cramming into a rather large space, but with not enough food, I guess, to go around, and food fights ensuing, according to the newspapers the next day, the ball was still considered to be a great success. So after that day of March 6, 1865, and after the inauguration, President Lincoln was looking ahead to a time of peace and reconciliation. As he'd done on many occasions during the Civil War, he turned to the theater as a means of escape from the physical and emotional strains caused by the conflict. And on Friday evening, April 14th, 1865, the President and his wife, accompanied by Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris, attended Ford's Theater to see the play Our American Cousin, produced by and starring Laura Keene. This was a three-act play. It was a farcical comedy about an awkward and boorish American being introduced to his aristocratic English relatives. And if any of you watched the Masterpiece Theater last night, it may have reminded you of some of the characters in that. It was an extremely popular play in the United States at the time. Unfortunately, less than 6 weeks after the inauguration of Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth would assassinate him at Ford's that very night at Ford's Theater, just a block from the patent office. It was a very quick run-through of some of the things that will be in the lesson plan that I mentioned, using the building as well as documents, works of art, and original photographs from the period as part of the lesson plan. And I thought we could end now with just a few reflection questions, which is, how does the inaugural ceremony and traditions reflect the democratic nature of the United States? And to what extent might they reflect the disposition of one man, in this case, Abraham Lincoln, at a particular moment in time? So I see Adam has put the questions up there for you in the discussion box.
And those are definitely two big questions, so I'm sure a lot of
They
our
are.
participants are collecting their thoughts now.
Yes, and I think it's great to just think about and reflect on why we have inaugural ceremonies and traditions and how they do reflect the nature of the society in which we live and, of course, the individuals. And if we even think about the inaugural ceremonies that will be taking place in just a few short weeks. So while you're thinking about those questions, I'm just going to move on to my final two slides so that we can conclude this portion of the session. And I'd like to just mention some of the teaching resources. Again, this presentation will be archived and you'll have access to these web resources. But we have many, many education resources available for teachers on the Smithsonian American Art Museum website. And the Charles Robertson pieces that you listen to are part of the Civil War History Building cell phone tour, which you can take either live in the building or is available via our website. And then finally, the link to the National Park Service Teaching with Historic Places site. And I will take any questions, if anybody has any at this point, any further questions that we may have missed.
Great, wonderful. Well, I think as we're waiting for questions to appear in the chat box, we'll just jump over and turn the floor to Ashley Naranjo now to take us into our final segment of today's teacher preview session. And we'll just try to address some of those questions as they come in.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Adam. I just wanted to thank Carrie and Liz from the American History and American Art Museums, respectively, for highlighting just some of the many online Smithsonian resources and teaching techniques that we have available. They went through primary sources and object-based learning and really modeling careful looking techniques that, a lot of us in the classroom are hoping to, be able to portray to our students. So one of the great things about the Smithsonian is just the many perspectives and subject areas that can be covered on a specific unifying topic or theme. So I just wanted to remind folks to go ahead and check out the virtual exhibit hall, and that's on the actual site itself. And I'll go ahead and post that link for you. And that is actually a pretty comprehensive list of all of the resources that we've compiled on this topic. That'll also be great preparation for Thursday's inauguration conference. Speaking of which, the inauguration conference will take place starting Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can find a schedule on our website. We'll also have a pair of sessions highlighting the history of civil rights for our February and March sessions. And coming up in April and May, we'll have a pair of sessions focusing on community stories and immigration migration. So just a few things to look forward to. Save the dates and be sure to check back at the Smithsonian Education Conferences.org site. Just wanted to also make sure that everyone was aware of the Smithsonian Quest site. This year, this is really a great companion to the Smithsonian Education Conferences. And I wanted to make sure that you felt comfortable with the site and also give you a quick walkthrough of some of the activities that students can participate in leading up to this current inauguration, taking from history, similar to how Liz and Carrie have, highlighting the Lincoln inauguration, and then also what they can do to prepare for this current inauguration. The site that you'll go to when you want to sign up for the Quest is smithsonianquest.org. And I just have that site up real quick. And once you register, you'll get an invite code as well as the login page for you and your students. And then just wanted to also, the digital badges themselves are kind of what you would think of when you think of badges, the actual physical badges. So, for example, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, police badges, they really do reward accomplishments. They're kind of this outward sign of hard work. So when students earn these digital badges, they go through different Quest activities and really do feel this sense of accomplishment once they've completed the actual Quest and have earned their badge. This year, our themes will be highlighted. So we'll have the special election theme, which is right here. Last year, we had land as well as water themes that highlighted our Shout online conference. And here you can see the theme that's highlighted as well as the badges that are available for your students. So I'm going to take you through just a few of the slides. And this badge, this first badge here is the historical biographer. And here we highlight 3 different quests that the students would need to complete in order to earn the historical biographer. The first is the Wordsworth, which highlights the inaugural speeches. And here we do it a little bit differently. We use great visualizations, word clouds, wordles, whatever you would like to call them, that highlight the number of times that a president used a specific word. And the larger the word is, the more it was used. So obviously in 1865, war was really a popular word for Abraham Lincoln. And so within the Quest, students will use these wordles to be able to kind of highlight what life was like at that certain time. And they have an option of many different inaugural speeches. In the second quest that they'll have to complete, they'll look at the different objects from the presidency. And this was also a website that Carrie had highlighted earlier from the American History website. So here you'll take a look at all of the different objects in our collections. You can see everything from Lincoln's top hat, Bill Clinton's saxophone, the teddy bear, as well as FDR's chat. And in this next slide, you'll see we had a student who actually submitted a quest for this specific quest. And here you can see the Hope and the Forward campaign posters. And later on Thursday, we'll have Brianna from the National Portrait Gallery highlighting all of the different presidential campaign posters, as well as 4 different presidents and their portraits that are featured within the National Portrait Gallery. We also have the student chose to highlight pens because of the amount of legislation that Obama in his first 4 years had signed into law, as well as the controversy of his birth certificate and the buttons, the campaign buttons, having to do with the grassroots approach to getting him elected for a second term. And then finally, students are asked to use either collections.si.edu or any of our different searches to be able to complete the last quest. And so within this, they'll be able to create an exhibit, a model of an exhibit, and tell the story of one of their favorite presidents of the past. So each of these 3 activities are separate, but they do work on telling the story through speeches, symbols, and collection items of a president of their choice. And all of these are submitted online to our teacher advisory group, including myself. And it's a great way for students to be able to, whether they want to work, during school time, classroom, or, after school, at home, there's a lot of different options for ways to use the badging program in their school. We also have a symbol spotter, which highlights a number of different things within the Smithsonian collection, including this portrait here, which again will be one of the featured portraits in our Thursday sessions. And this here allows students to take a look at an interactive portrait that we have and look at all of the different symbols. Here you can see in the background there's a rainbow, and there's also a quill, and just the way that George Washington is dressed, things like that, so that students can choose one of those symbols and kind of take a closer look at all of this. The next quest takes a look at the presidential seal and the symbols that are involved in that. And if you have learned about or if your students have learned about the roles of the president, this is a great way for them to also take a look at which roles of the president aren't featured in the presidential seal, and they get to create their own presidential seal. So they get to add symbols. We also took a look at the American flag and what that means to students. And this is adapted from the American History's Share Your Story activity, and that's available online as well, and we have that in the resource hall. Finally, the last badge that we have in this series is the correspondent badge, and that includes journaling, digital diaries, and a time capsule. And that's taking a look at this current presidential inauguration. And the first one is taking a look at how things were done in 1865. We have a primary source, a journal entry from the daughter of the first secretary of the Smithsonian. And we take a look at the depth of Abraham Lincoln and how she wrote about the event, what was going on around her. And so we actually get to see the actual handwriting of the daughter back in 1865. So that focuses really on journaling, but then obviously in 2013, we've moved more to a social media approach when trying to document major events in our lifetime. So here the students are able to choose whichever method works best for them. If they want to blog about the inauguration, if they want to show us a tweet that they've done, or a picture of the inauguration, that also counts for this quest within the correspondent badge. And then this is also just to take a look at the different the front page of the newspapers, as well as some of the headlines. And finally, this was just an example. If I were to do this quest, thinking back to the last inauguration, the entire Washington, D.C. area was filled with kind of Obama fever. And so I took a picture of that Obama minivan that we have in the left-hand corner. And then in the hours approaching the inauguration, we got up really early at 5 a.m. And you could barely see the Washington Monument in front of you. And as the crowd approached, you can kind of just see in the right-hand corner, the sun's about to come up, and we're still waiting for the inauguration. We're bundled up. It's super cold. And finally, then you can see the huge crowd behind me in the Smithsonian Castle in the left-hand corner. So it was truly memorable, and I'm so glad that I took photographs of the event. So students that are planning to attend the event, we definitely encourage you to post your photos, hashtag Inaug 2013. You can also connect with us at Smithsonian EDU on Twitter, and we'd love to see all of the great quest submissions that you have as well. Also, if anyone has any questions about any of these, you can contact us directly at learning@si.edu. And this is just kind of a small highlight of the resources that we have available through the quest. So I think that's about it, unless anyone has any questions.
Great. Well, we'll keep an eye on the chat and see if any questions come in. But thank you, Ashley, for moving through all of these badges and quests that are available. Great to see these photos here for the correspondent badge. I'm thinking I should start working on mine as well. I might have some pictures from that inauguration too. Though I was back near the Washington Monument, a little further back than you.
Sure.
Well, as we're waiting for any last questions, I'm just going to share a quick evaluation with everyone. In the top left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a yellow evaluation button has appeared. And if you click that, it will launch a survey in your browser, and we'd love to just get your feedback on this session as we prepare for upcoming sessions as well. And as we have gone a little over time, I will just dive right into a quick thank you to Carrie, Elizabeth, and Ashley for covering all these educational programs, as well as opportunities to get students engaged with the work that we're sharing. It's really exciting to see so many resources that really fill in the details of the inauguration. So it's not just an overwhelming event and then it's done. And once again, we hope that you'll join us for the session taking place later this week. And I'm going to pull that up on the screen, the Q&A with Smithsonian experts. So we'll hopefully hear you again joining us on January 10th. And it looks like we're all set with questions, so I think we'll wrap up for today. If anyone else would like to say a final word before we close, feel free to.
Thanks, everybody, for participating.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.